As much as we all like to rip on men, this is time to take some accountability.
Go ahead.
If I understand where you're coming from, however, if you take what you're saying and put it towards the history of the world, let's just talk about the US for a second. The history of the US. 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, 10s.
What about it?
Men had the jobs and women often did not get hired. Women often had no job. Women often were not invited to have a job, and women often just weren't even allowed to have a job. Their job was to find a man, get married, and have children. So
women have always worked, but
But what? In like a small factory for a penny an hour while men were in like actual jobs?
You think in the 1920s there were...
It's almost like she doesn't really know history. Because if she did know history, she would know that there wasn't really that much jobs available for anybody. And the jobs that were available were grueling. So women weren't lining up for those jobs.
There were like an abundance of cushy jobs. Like 99%, hold on, 99% of men had like, and they had super dangerous
and
jobs.
And women weren't allowed to work in those jobs even if they needed the money.
No, that's fine. Let me ask you a question. You're living
But can I finish my thought?
One quick question, and I promise I'll let you finish.
Okay.
You're living in 1930s, 1920s Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
With the coal mines.
Right.
You have a choice. You can go into the coal mines as a woman. You can be the first. Well, hold on. I'm
Black
asking.
Dance is my favorite movie, so.
Okay, great.
Well,
So
Pittsburgh, totally.
great. Thank you for that non sequitur. So anyways, let's say you had a choice. You could go into the coal mines
okay.
and get black lung
Yeah.
and die like in your 30s or 40s of lung cancer.
Totally. Or
you could stay home and be a homemaker. Which would you prefer?
which was I allowed to do?
No, which would you?
She won't concede any points. This is a softball question, and she's about to swing and miss.
You prefer?
If I was broke, probably a coal miner.
Oh my God!
Because
Answer the
people,
question.
no, that's my answer.
No, but hold on. Answer the question. If you had the choice, and here are your two choices, to be a homemaker and your husband goes into the coal mines, or you get to go into the coal mines and I guess your husband stays home. I don't know what the deal is.
But the problem with your question
What's the problem with the question?
is that women back then did not get a choice.
Okay, sure. I'm going to grant.
They were told you can't work in this coal mine. Too dangerous for you. Too whatever.
I'm not sure.
They were told your job is to be a homemaker, even if you don't have kids.
Sure.
Even if you don't have kids, your job as a woman is not to work in some sort of a physical demanding job. It's not.
Oh, so oppressive.
Not to be a CEO. It's not to be anything. But it's not to be anything that
CEO of the coal mine.
involves work. Women do not really get jobs. You can be a receptionist in the 50s if you want. But other than that, women were not given the choice. Even if you're a single woman by yourself with no kids who needs money because you're going to be homeless.
Are you going to answer my question, though?
I'm answering right now.
You're not answering
You
the
were
question.
not given the choice to work.
Women did have the choice to work, and they did work.
Barely.
What do you mean
like
barely?
Triangle Shirtwaist Factory? Like, it was not a situation where lots of women were available to work. And so, through generations and slow decline, where women were slowly able to work more, it was still a very normal, like almost taught thing for women to not work. And nowadays, it's so much common for women to work, which is great.
Sure.
However,
Do you want to answer the question, though?
what is it?
Okay, if you had the choice between being a homemaker or working in a coal mine and like
In
dying
what,
of emphysema
1920s?
in your 40s
In
and like,
1920s?
Sure,
I wouldn't
1920s.
get the choice. That's my
You won't answer the question.
choice.
let's say you did. It's a hypothetical.
If I begged and pleaded,
It has nothing to do with begging
I would
or
pick
not.
the coal mine.
You know what? They're putting out the coal mine's putting out a program. They're like, we're going to hire one woman, so you do get the choice in this
I would
hypothetical.
want to work.
You'd prefer to work in the coal mine than be a homemaker.
Yes.
Really?
If I was by
Okay,
myself
all right,
and I
there you
didn't
go.
have money and I needed money to live,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'd rather
That's
work in
not-
the coal
that's-
mine.
That's not really the purview of the hypothetical. You're
But
adding
the
other.
hypothetical doesn't make any sense.
I'm trying.
If I had
You don't make any sense.
the
point I'm
choice
trying
and
to
my
make-
life was perfect, obviously I wouldn't want to work in a coal mine. But back then there weren't that many options. And if I was a poor woman who didn't have a source of income, who didn't have a husband, I would much rather work in a coal mine than sit in a house by myself because I didn't have a job, because I wasn't allowed one. I would have to marry a man. That is my job. Back
so
then.
throughout all this claim that women weren't allowed to work through history is just demonstrably false. Women have always been able to work.
But what, out of 100 women, 10 women could work?
All women could work,
No.
but many women opted. It was just the sort of
You're so wrong about that.
how am I wrong?
Because women were often never hired, and if they were hired for much less money than they deserved.
Wow. She has no proof of what she's saying, but she believes it to be true. Where do you get all this confidence from?
What evidence do you have for this?
History books.
Okay, let me ask you a question, and I want to move off of the wage gap here pretty soon.
My grandpa was a coal miner. Okay. So, just let you guys
Okay,
know.
thank you
I
for
just
that.
heard that. I was
Yeah.
like, this my time.
If it was actually the case that women were paid more than men, what's actually stopping companies? And you would agree that companies, their goal is to make money?
Okay.
Like, do you think
Yeah,
most
capitalism society,
Do you think?
yes.
Would you agree with me that corporations are extremely greedy,
Yes.
and their primary goal is to generate profit?
Yeah.
Like, you would agree that you might say that corporations, like there is sexism in corporations. You'd probably argue that because men occupy the highest positions in these corporations, like they're part of the executive team, they're part of the board, whatever, the
I'd party with
CEOs, et cetera. You would say that there could be sexism in these corporations.
There could be.
Right. Or you probably say that there is. So, but you would agree that also corporations' primary motive is profit and money.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So do you think that corporations prioritize their alleged or supposed sexism over making money?
No.
Okay, so then if that was genuinely the case, that you could genuinely get away with paying women less, what is stopping from corporations just exclusively hiring women and saving like 30% or 20% on their payroll expenses and beating out their competitors by only hiring women?
Because men believe that men make more money and men
will
are
sue.
better at their jobs.
What? But you just said corporations are in it for the profit more than sexism. But now you're jumping back to this conspiracy thing? What is up with this chick?
So a CEO man who is sexist, I mean, I don't know these people.
But you're saying it's the case that women are just as good as men.
Yeah,
Okay. So then if that's the case, if that's your worldview,
that's mine. That's not
So-
a man's. That's not every man's worldview.
okay, so but what is, again, if it's actually true that you can get away with paying these women 30%, 20%, why don't the companies just hire women?
Because they don't like women.
Hold on, I'm a bit confused. Doesn't HR usually do all the hiring? And isn't HR usually women? So women don't hire women?
It was the ultimate motivator, not just like boys club sexism.
Yeah, but they're scared they're gonna get a what's it called? A lawsuit. They're scared they're gonna get a lawsuit, a sexism lawsuit, an ageism lawsuit, a pregnancy lawsuit. They're scared.
There's literally women. There's gyms just for women out here in the valley, and men sued because they can't come in. So like, people
Okay,
sue all the
sure.
time.
It's
We're
well, I
talking
guess
about
you're
this
not
hypothetical
in California,
situation.
You're not supposed to
If
discriminate.
you can bring in a male CEO who is known for discriminating against women and ask him these questions and he gives you real answers, I'd love to see that. However, they're all going to tell you bullshit.
What are they going to tell you?
That the men they hire are just great and they didn't mean to discriminate and they didn't mean to do any of this stuff. But it's, it's hard to get the truth out of these people. But if you look at everything,
I mean,
If they told you the truth, you wouldn't believe it. You have your mind set on patriarchy.
the thing is that this wage gap thing, it's been legislated against since
Yeah,
the
it has been.
1960s.
So
if you can prove as a woman that there is an actual discrepancy between wages between your male coworkers, you can bring a lawsuit.
but that's the problem, is people do things so secretively now. Ageism, racism, sexism, all of it.
But okay,
That can be done in such ways where it's avoidable to be sued against.
I think, look, ultimately,
More conspiracy, a lot of hearsay. and no actual substance.
It's definitely not as bad as it used to be. I'm not saying like the sexism in the workplace is as bad as it was in the 60s or 50s. It's way better now, and I'm so grateful that it's better now. However, it still exists. And acknowledging that it's still, even if it's like only 5% exists, it's still there.
So you're saying 95 cents to $1?
I don't know.
What do you think is the number?
You gotta be kidding me. She doesn't even know the percentage of the wage gap that is supposedly oppressing her life. Give me a break.
I don't know.
Well, you said there's a wage gap. You would have to articulate what that is.
It depends on each person.
What do you think about Google, for example? They did this internal audit hoping to reinforce some of this feminist nonsense, and it actually found that they were overpaying women.
Okay.
So would this be evidence of sexism against men?
Yeah, they can take it down. They can do whatever they want.
Why were they paying more women before that? Like, because the men were... Okay, so they were paying those women more because priorly they were not paying women properly. So they're going to overcompensate that time because women were not getting paid a lot. So then when they want to look good, they want to look good to society.
No,
Hey, the girl in pink, she has a lot to say, but she ain't saying much. The whole night, she ain't making no sense.
I'm asking, did they find out why they were
CEO
overpaying
of
women?
Google was a woman.
Well, wouldn't you, hold on. So what do you mean by why?
I mean,
Or
did
how?
they say like, oh, we accidentally did this, or were they doing that on purpose?
Well, let me ask you a question. What would it actually matter if it's on purpose or not?
Because if they accidentally said, oh, all these women's performances were just better and we gave them raises and we didn't realize that it was only women, then
Wouldn't that have to apply the other way towards men too?
Yeah.
But you would make the claim if like there was actually merit for the men being paid more for whatever reason that is, you would probably make the argument that would be due to like sexism and the wage gap.
You can't say probably. If a company showed proof that all the men were working harder and doing better than the women, I would have zero problem with the men being paid more than the women of that company.
Wouldn't you just argue that, oh, it's just the boys' club?
It depends.
Well, isn't that the basis of your whole argument?
Everything just depends, though.
Okay, everything just depends. So if it's the case that you found a company where, the men were making 10% more, you would probably say there must be a wage gap due to sexism.
Well, what is
but
it?
If the women...
Is it every single man of the company, even one who has no position that's better than a woman, and the women are making less than the men who they're higher than? Maybe then it's worth looking into.
In reality, that scenario would never happen. No company is going to pay a man more than a woman just because he's a man, especially on the entry level. There is no benefit into doing that.
But if it's a very obvious just distribution of wealth, like the men are actually doing better than the women, and some men are getting paid less, but some women are getting paid more, but most men are getting paid more, then you can say, it's the company's job to pay who's doing better.
So you do acknowledge there are scenarios in which the men are genuinely doing better, ergo they deserve to be paid more?
Yeah, I've never said that's wrong. It's when a company pays men who are even doing worse than women way more than women, then it's a problem.
Well,
but where's your evidence of that? How do you know that's going on? Are you assuming, or you seen the actual statistics on that?
how would you establish that?
If they can show proof.
And in which case, I would agree with you, they could bring some sort of sex discrimination lawsuit. Okay. But it's not clear to me if that's even happening like on a wide scale.
Okay.
Why is she not understanding? The way that she's describing it, she makes it seem like there's an epidemic of this problem going on.
Again, look, I can only repeat myself here at this point. The wage gap is simply argued away. It's an earnings gap. It simply compares all the earnings of men to all the earnings of women.
But I'm not talking about the earnings gap.
Okay, you're talking about the wage gap?
Like if a man and a woman apply for the exact same position, the payment difference. I'm not talking about more women don't have jobs than men and women make less than men overall per capita of the entire US.
Yeah, couldn't you see a difference between two men though? So for example, one of the men negotiates for a higher salary than the other man does.
Same job?
same exact job. But I mean, wouldn't you agree that there's a component of the company is going to make you an offer and then there's going to be a negotiation? Some people might not even negotiate and they're just going to take the first offer that comes to them.
Which goes back to her point about women stereotypically don't know how to negotiate for themselves and ask more. Some men who maybe weren't
But I thought you guys were smarter.
raised with a good relationship with money, or how if their parents weren't wealthy, they don't know that they can negotiate for more. So it is all based on, I think, how you were raised.
But also a lot of the time women who speak up for themselves are told that they are like aggressive and disrespectful and rude.
And
whereas men who speak up for themselves about money are like ambitious and awesome and they're going for it, you know? So it's just, there's so many different factors.
I got to read a couple chats here. We do have to move it on.
From the
but
freaky men. Not allowed to have as hard of jobs.
Listen, if you...
No, wait, hold on. Women literally couldn't do the jobs.
They could, but they were not as allowed as.
Hold on. Do you think women have the same physical strength as men?
Right.
They could.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
No.
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 It's very difficult to have a conversation with a person when they don't live in reality.
No.
Yeah, but
it's physically known that.
Here, tilt your mic down, please. Tilt your mic down.
But in today's world, strength doesn't even matter. We have machines.
But your claim was about historical work.
Okay.
Why is she trying to switch it up now? The original statement was women weren't strong enough to do those jobs back in the day. And she said women are just as strong as men. All right. Prove your point.
Okay.
Where physical strength.
Coal mining, women can do that. Building, women can do that.
Hold on, no. Women don't have the requisite general strength to do a lot of these professions. If it was true, why if men and women's physical strength was equal, then they would be in these positions.
Women have to work harder to gain more muscle. That is true. Men it's easier for men to gain muscle and be stronger.
But
however,
okay, go ahead.
So we're stronger.
In the coal mines, in the buildings, in whatever, women can still have jobs there. Not everything is based off of physical strength.
Are machines not taking over men and women's jobs?
Well, we're talking about before machines, right?
You're talking historically,
but
a lot of this machinery still today that makes physical labor easier still requires a degree of physical strength to operate.
But you
like
think
a
women
jackhammer,
can't have physical strength?
Instead of swinging a pickaxe to like break up stones, we have like jackhammers, but it requires physical strength to hold the jackhammer, to keep it steady, etc.
And are you saying women are incapable of having physical strength?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
He's not trying to say all women can't do it. He's just trying to say a small percentage can.
I'm saying that generally speaking, and I'm assuming you're going to agree with me on this, generally speaking, men are stronger than women, descriptively.
In science, men are able to gain more muscle mass than women.
In science and in reality.
Women.
They're just naturally stronger than women.
However, her mind to it and tries very hard, she could still have a job similar to a man's.
And how many
could withstand more pain?
Why is transgender athletes such a controversy now if you think men and women have equal physical strength?
Well, I don't think transgender should be in a women's sport at all.
Yeah, that's definitely everyone's opinion. But the reason why it's such a controversial topic is because these transgender women, they still have more physical strength because they were born as men. So
she was right. It's depending on when they decided to transition. If they transitioned at a certain time, they never developed those men aspects, and they always develop only women aspects.
I mean,
I know a lot of trans women.
If a man starts transitioning at 11,
only women are confused about this issue, or really feminine men.
And they don't have the male physical strength that gives them an advantage in some sort of a sport.
I mean, I would probably dispute this because my position on this is that the sole difference between men and women is not exclusively relegated to the endocrine system. So what you're talking about is if they're taking puberty blockers.
Okay.
But like there's skeletal differences, there's other differences like lung capacity, for example. So again, even if they do transition at a younger age, yes, that will have some impact on the musculoskeletal system, but there are still going to be certain differences between like a
Trans women are more feminine than any woman in this room. Like they take their womanisms very seriously.
Y'all smoking crack! Something is wrong with you people!
Then that must mean that you don't take womanhood seriously at all.
womanisms? What is
They
that?
take being like effeminate like a fucking job. Most women don't even care about like looking as
So
feminine.
are you gonna argue that trans women are more women, like they're better women than women? So you're saying men are better women than men?
Yeah, because they know exactly what
You're
a
gonna
man
have
wants.
to wrap your head around that one. So are men better women than women?
My sister is more manlier than my trans friend. My trans friend is more feminine, more ladylike, more in her feminine aspect of her life than any like.
A transgender is not more feminine and more woman than I am.
We are talking about physical strength here. Physical appearance, like how nice your skin is, doesn't have to do anything with how you can excel in a sport.
Yeah, my trans friend would never even try to join a sport because she never like wanted to compete like that.
I believe Brian was talking about the muscle mass and the lung capacity.
And I know a large percentage of American men who only play video games can barely do a sit-up, let alone a pull-up. And they're tech people.
Can you do a sit-up or a pull-up?
I don't know what we're talking about.
Yes, I can. I was a gymnast for
It's
most
all
of my
over.
life.
I don't know what we're talking about right now.
I think we're just going on
We
some
gotta
tangents.
stop. Here's what we have to do though. We can't like always go to the exception. I'm gonna sit here and agree with you. There are definitely individual women who are way stronger than men who could beat up men. But what I'm talking about is, if we're just talking about generalities, the majority of men are stronger than the majority of women.
Yeah.
It's biology.
In my books, you're a dumbass if you disagree.
So yes, is there like are there women out there who are stronger?
If you
There's
pull
women
12
who are
students
stronger than me.
off the street and ask them to do a fitness test. Do I think that women might perform better than men currently? Possibly. As in, if you pull 12 random people, 6 men, 6 women, and ask them to do a fitness test, I've met a lot of out of shape men recently. So I'm saying I think women take care of themselves in their youth because they know that they're supposed to be attractive.
I don't know what this girl's smoking, but women don't go to the gym like guys do. What are you talking about?
For men.
Boy.
And there's a lot of men that have gone into very lazy professions where physical work is a part of what they do.
Somebody over here wanted to weigh in, or?
I just wanted to say something quickly. I think that Brian is pointing at, this side is pointing at exceptions to the rule. But in general, let's say the coal mines. Today, not time before. If we have today the coal mines, like back then, and we have
Today or back then?
Let's say today. Let's say today because I'm not going to talk about
the coal mines in 2025.
Yes, no, I'm not talking about like values. I'm talking about strength.
Okay.
Let's say today you put a man, a 30-year-old man and a 30-year-old woman, healthy, without exceptions, 100% healthy, to go work at the coal mines. Let's see how many buckets of coal the men can bring out in 2 hours and how many buckets of coal can the woman bring.
Depends if they were taught
Common sense. She's based in reality.
how to work the machine.
No, that's what I'm saying. From zero, they just learn, healthy. The man is going to do more because it's biologically proven, scientifically proven. If I am the owner of that mine, I'm going to pay more than man because he brings 30 buckets and the woman brings 25 maybe. And I think that's the difference. It's not because the man is better.
She's barely bringing 5 buckets back, bro.
It's scientifically, biologically, it is what it is. So he's going to get paid better. Now, as a work as a woman, nothing comes to my mind that a woman is better doing it. I don't know. I have to think about it. Maybe the woman is getting paid better. But I don't see that as being underestimated. It's who gives more, who works better.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
I think we're talking about the third variable. As I minored in sociology, you need 3 variables to be able to judge someone. So you can't just judge someone on man, woman, and their job. You need a third variable.
Lady, you're overthinking this. We're talking about taking a big rock and turning it into a smaller rock. Straight brute force.
The third variable.
Like race, class, and gender. You can't just judge someone off race and class.
Wait.
You need three variables to draw a conclusion. Minimum.
But hold on. Why would you need? Okay, if the question
As in
is
stereotypes in America.
But stereotype. If the question is
We're stereotyping
who is
who's
physically stronger on average, men or women, what would the third variable be? Like, what's the third variable needed to
Do they
determine
work out?
that?
Do they not work out?
So let's say
An obese
No.
man versus a fit
Bro,
man.
it would-
Wait, let's
tall man versus a
say
short
that
man.
a man and a woman are twins. They're born at the same time. They work out. They have the same eating schedule, same workout schedule. The man is going to get stronger than the woman. That is true because
Yes.
of biology.
She is correct.
However, does that mean that a woman is less than the man? No.
That's not what we're talking about, though.
Okay. In the coal mines, that might have mattered. We moved past that.
But the argument here is okay. So if
She finally made sense. It took hours, but she got there.
If it
I'm
is
a
the
woman of
case,
leisure.
hold on. God damn, let me finish, please. Stop interrupting. If it is the case that historically the majority of available jobs were physical in nature,
That's not
and
true.
Anymore.
Really?
Doctors,
How many doctors are there?
shoemakers, clothing makers.
I would argue that even like a shoemaker requires like muscular strength in the arms
No,
and
there's
dexterity and.
No, but back then.
I'm not an
They still
expert
have
in
some.
like what is the called when you're there's a specific term when you're a shoemaker like a what's it called cobbler. Like there's probably some level of physicality even involved in that. In any case, if it is the case that the majority of jobs historically did require some degree of physical strength, this would seem to, and if it's also the case that men are just generally physically stronger than women, is it any surprise that men were more likely to occupy these positions?
It was purely because of the way society was set up. Because if women were taught to grow strong from a young age and fight to work jobs.
Here we go again.
Wow, she's back at it again with this conspiracy stuff. You just agreed that it doesn't matter if a woman's training just as hard as a man. The man will always be more superior physically. So why are you back to conspiracy mode? Oh my goodness.
They could have easily worked those jobs. And I get that men are stronger physically. However, if a woman really tried, she could get as strong as a man in that capacity.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm
So
positive.
wait, just let me ask you this then.
What? I'm confused again.
If we were to look at the strongest, so the strongest man and the strongest woman
Yeah.
to have ever existed,
Right.
or how about alive today, you would say that their strength is equal.
I mean, I don't know the strongest
You
man or the strongest woman,
know.
so I'm not sure.
subjective.
However,
It's objective. It's
How-
If you take 2 seconds right now, you can find that information on Google. It's not a mystery.
literally
However-
objective.
however-
here's 500 pounds. Can you lift it? Go ahead.
however, in the olden days, what we're talking about,
Tell me the olden days. Yeah,
there's no gyms, there's just work. There's just birth and work.
I agree.
If a woman was taught to plow fields with her brother and do all that shit with her brother, the same time, same exact teaching styles, she could do the same thing.
So what
And
do you
you
do when you're
saying
plowing?
Sure, she might be doing the same things as her brothers, but will she be doing it as good as her brothers?
A field.
I don't know. I never plowed a
Are
field.
you lifting things with your upper body
I've
strength?
never plowed a field.
You should try.
So she's just talking.
Plow a field.
Stonework,
You look-
cobbling
you lift
work.
tractor.
No, I don't lift. I run.
You're
because I
tall.
don't feel like
You
lifting.
seem
I don't
strong.
want to be strong.
I think you could do well.
yoga.
I probably could if
you'd
I really
kill it.
wanted to.
You would kill it, Marin.
Thank you.
You would kill it in the
She doesn't know how silly she looks right now. That's crazy.
fields.
Thank you.
Back to the fields you go. Look, the strongest woman to have ever lived isn't even approaching like.
Well, that's with everything we have today, with the weightlifting and the whatever. And people spend their entire lives dedicated to getting stronger. In the olden days, what we're talking about right now, people did not care. They just wanted to work. And what I was saying is that even though women would be capable to work those jobs, society set them up to not work those jobs on purpose. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's not just on purpose.
It is on purpose.
There's just a strength component to it that cannot be ignored.
But what I just said.
No, but you're saying, well, if these women, look, I think that there are women who, if they're really strong, I think they can do the job. My argument is, if you have 100 men and 100 women, and both of them, you put both of them through, you're saying
the same training,
same training, and they're both like athletic.
Since birth, same food, same everything.
You do all of that.
Yeah, it's called the Olympics. It happens every 4 years.
Those 100 men are going to be stronger than all of those women.
Well, maybe the women would find out a way to do it without all the strength.
Hold up. But aren't we talking about strength?
What?
Work smarter, not harder.
Work smarter, not harder.
How? Okay, here's
We make
the
the men
task.
do it.
Yeah.
Here's the task.
Exactly.
Here's the
Make
task.
them do it.
I'm a dom.
Move this pile of rocks that each weigh 70 pounds from point A to point B.
Right.
Okay. Men, due to their physical strength, are going to be superior at
But
doing
women will
this.
come up with like a way to pull it. Or
And
like,
so do men. So did men.
I just don't think it's a
the
good
problem
use of
with your
efficiency.
argument is there's no historical value to say that women would not do better because women were never given the chance. That's all I'm saying.
There is a precedence for it.
Women were
due
never
to-
given the chance to
It would-
try.
Hold on. Why?
But
You
why it
agree?
matters so
You
much?
agree it's a given that men are physically stronger.
Okay.
And do you think historically people also just knew men stronger than women?
Because they forced women to not try.
So
yes.
So that was a lie.
Continue.
Are you?
So men forced them into common sense. Or maybe the women back then had more common sense.
You're saying that physical strength is a social, like a social structure?
A little bit.
You're saying it's subjective, social, like physical strength. It's not
Muscular
objective.
men are attractive. Muscular women are ugly and manly. That's a whole thing.
You're a victim. Here we go, CSI.
I've seen that everywhere. Women who weightlift, women who do boxing, they're not seen as attractive because they're muscular.
What does this have to do with, like, historic?
And I'm telling you right now, and that is today's world. In the olden days, a woman had muscle. That's like vile. That's like against the rights of women.
Against the what? Against the rights of women?
Women have
What rights? Hold on. What are you talking about?
women
Because
have a
women
way.
were supposed to be weak
look pretty.
and
Women
look
are
pretty
weak.
and be tiny.
Wait, say it,
Maybe
go ahead,
you
say
are.
it.
Women are weak.
Maybe you are.
And also, I just don't understand, like, why do you have to make it a social thing?
I'm not weak
Because it's
either.
just not a good use of efficiency. If you send women to plow the field, why don't you just take advantage of each other's talents? And maybe women are better doing some other jobs, like maybe sewing.
Like what,
and then
giving
men
birth?
That's why there's
That's not a job. That's
Modern women hates their own biology. They just can't stand it.
the part of
labor.
life.
That's why
You know,
women
picking the cherries,
were behind
you
the
know,
sewing
yeah,
machine
getting
back
pregnant.
in the old
Everyone
days.
has their own strengths. We're not trying
exactly.
to diminish men. Men have their strengths, and we have our strengths. We're trying to come together as a society. We don't want to get away from men. We love men. We want men to just treat us equally, and like respect us, and not like
because
it's not that hard to
the second
understand.
the second men say we're stronger, we can do more, is the second they started having
But
all
is it-
political
Why are you guys
rights.
comparing it?
So the moment we had common sense, we became the enemy.
Yourself
But-
to
Your
us.
logic that they're stronger. Biologically,
Okay, and
they're
what about it?
stronger.
Is it
women
descriptively?
It means that-
Hold on.
And what about it?
They're
No, I
stronger
want to
doesn't
hear
mean
what
they
she wants to
disrespect
say
women.
about it.
Say it. Go ahead. Say it.
Men are biologically stronger.
No one said no.
So therefore, therefore they're going to be the ones doing the harder jobs that require more strength. I.e., why women couldn't do the coal mine, the construction, the whatever you say that they didn't get the opportunity to do. It's because they're weaker than men, and that's why they didn't get the opportunity. It's not because society made it this way.
Yeah, also I agree that men having more physical strength doesn't mean they're superior to women. And this is...
I can't believe you have to explain this to grown women. It's embarrassing.
That's what I call a chain reaction.
Manifest my own destiny. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the perfect recipe. May they remember me, my words will live on. I'm guided by an energy, a flame, hold it close to you. Check out my melodies. It's the media that's been leading you, I'll show you a thing. Misdirection, what's the message? They don't want you to win.
As much as we all like to rip on men, this is time to take some accountability.